Julie, you and I started doing 2026 real estate predictions podcast probably about what, halfway into 2025?
Yeah, around about September.
Right.
Yeah.
And the podcast that we were doing back then, we were very on target with what actually has happened. And I'm really kind of shocked, to be honest with you. I mean, you and I have uncovered
I
some
think you're
things.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but we were too conservative. We didn't know that what's that mortgage defeasance what the heck is that called? You wrote that
Defeasance. I think it's called
defeasance, yeah.
defeasance. Yeah.
And then all these other types of programs that are going to basically make it so that people can, basically take their rate with them and all these things, all these programs. And guys, the great news is, and they're all going to be announced very soon. There is every reason to believe. Julie and I have some connections to the people in Washington that have to do with housing, FHFA and things like that nature, and Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And they're all anticipating some huge sweeping changes that are about to happen. And you can see that the groundwork has already been laid for that, based on, frankly, a lot of the fundamental changes that have happened in credit scoring, happened in mortgage qualifications, happened in all these different categories. And what's really exciting is that it's not just going to be some gimmick. Every aspect of housing on the residential side is going to be upgraded in a significant way. You're going to see more people excited about real estate like we haven't probably experienced in our entire careers, which is, 25 years. And I'm really excited about it because it's about damn time, to be honest with you. The housing again is
That's
the
for
focus.
sure. We're all tired of saying for the past 3 years, the market's coming back. The market's coming back. Sales are going to be up. Rates are going to come down.
I know.
Inventory is going to go up. All those things. I feel like you do. We shouldn't have had to wait that long. But I also think that there was a bit of a hangover from the pandemic market because that was just so fast and furious that, a normal 3 years, it just would have felt kind of normal. But because of those 2.5 years that were nutballs, it felt extra weird. And so I think it's about time too.
I guess I'm just
Well, we'll talk about it with our outline today on the
Yeah,
pod.
yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking today about 2026 real estate predictions, what agents must do now. And what I'm encouraging you to do is if you're not feeling unbelievably optimistic and excited about the new year, you need to maybe do a checkup from the neck up because there's no doubt the wind is going to be at the industry's back like never before. And just be unbelievably excited about that. So, we're going to give you some points today to really, I think, salivate over for the sake of exciting and motivating yourself. The intention of these points are for you to feel comfortable and confident with sharing perhaps your predictions with your real estate clients and maybe your fellow real estate professionals about maybe what you think is going to happen based on what some of our predictions are. Now, we're not going to get to all the predictions on today's podcast. We're going to get to as many of them as we can. But what we are going to do is make these notes available to all of you if you are a subscriber to our newsletter. And all you've got to do is go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe to the newsletter. It's completely free. You get all of that day's notes as well as we write a lot of, Julie and I are probably writing 3 to 5 articles per week that are not really going to be good podcast content because some of it's just a little bit too wonkish for us to figure out how to present in an entertaining way on our podcast. So that's the information we included in the podcast, but that's also some of the gold that some of you guys are most enthusiastic about. So, bottom line, make sure you're subscribing to our newsletter, harrisrealestatedaily.com. All right, so I'm going to get to the first prediction, Julie. Prediction number one, the market will continue to bifurcate. Bifurcate means it's becoming two things. The reality is there'll be no average home sale. Homes will either sell in 7 days for over asking, or they'll sit on the market for over 90 days with 3 to 4 price drops. So you got to know your market. And what's really going to be confusing is that in some markets, like when Jules and I were selling real estate, there would be markets where you did have, certain streets or neighborhoods that sold in like overnight. And then you had others that are maybe just 5 miles down the road that would take 6 months, sometimes a
It was
year for the
very
same.
common for this
Right.
this thing to be exactly like that. It would go like this, sometimes with multiple offers, sometimes just a full price offer, or it would be like nobody cared for a while. You'd have to re-examine price, you'd have to do a new CMA, you'd have to look at your staging, you'd have to go through a lot of showings, handle the feedback, reprice it, restage it, and then it would eventually sell.
Now, how's that a prediction? Because in the past, up until maybe 6 months, 12 months ago, for the most part, housing has all been acting in accordance with, the home sales have gone up, home sales have gone down, appreciation has gone up, appreciation, whatever, right? Now it's going to be inside your market. There's going to be little micro markets, and it's going to be more important than ever, always important and more important than ever for you to really become a master of understanding the market statistics based on your MLS information. And with days in the market, you want to watch list to sell price ratio. You obviously want to watch the number of new listings and, frankly, what a lot of you let get by you, the amount of new construction in your marketplace, all these types of things. And we share with all this information with you on how to present it, obviously, to your buyers and primarily your sellers in our Premier coaching calls that we do every single day. When you join Premier Coaching, you get a daily semi-private coaching call with a Harris certified coach. And remember, joining Premier Coaching is free for the first 30 days. So click the link below or just go to premiercoaching.com. Julie, prediction number 2 is all on you.
All right, AI will decimate transactional agents. The reality is that any agents whose primary value is just opening doors or filling out forms will be replaced by technology. AI can create CMAs faster and oftentimes more accurately, manage scheduling better, and write better property descriptions. So the fix is master your human edge, but also don't ignore AI. Your value is no longer just processing transactions or, it's managing emotional risk, managing nonlinear negotiation, giving value, making yourself obviously of value. So as we teach in our book, Harris Rules, and of course, coaching, Premier Coaching that Tim just talked about, your value has to be anchored in indispensable skills. Drill your objection handlers, know how to be, the CMA is the perfect example, Tim. An AI can crank out CMAs all day long. But if you're the agent that can sit with the seller and say, you know what, I know that the comps say this, that, and the other thing, but let me tell you, this house was on this side of the street and had a great view. This house, which is almost the exact same model, wasn't in that same area, didn't have a great view. And I've seen both of them. In fact, I went to preview your competition before we met today. That's a big difference between you and just, cranking out AI. So I think there's a balance between not ignoring it, knowing how to use it, but also not making it such a crutch that you become irrelevant. I don't know how else to say that. What would you say?
Well, exactly what you said. And the real advantage, the agents that have the advantage in the marketplace are going to be the ones that know how to leverage the technology. But guess what? That's always been true. The real advantage is going to be had with agents that know how to leverage knowing what to say and how to say it. The day of being able to just sit behind your keyboard and if that ever was even true, and get business from social media and just doing all the passive stuff, those days are over. And the simple answer is why. Or rather, the question is why is that true? It's because AI is going to completely, it already is, leveling the playing field for, say, for example, you got into the business 5 years ago and you wanted to become a real estate influencer, and you bought into the idea that you had you became a real estate influencer on Instagram and on YouTube or whatever. It worked. You got a lot of attention. You were picking up some mostly first-time home buyer leads, and that was your funnel. Everyone thought you were the greatest thing since sliced bread. You guys know people like this. Now, what happened was, and what is definitely happening now, is that everybody is able to essentially emulate what you did on social media to gain what was your advantage, frankly, for attracting mostly buyer leads. And I'm going to say that again. When somebody gets a real estate license nowadays, and this is happening now in a lot of brokerages that Julie and I work within, you're going to see the new agent essentially being walked through a very simple process to have an AI version of themselves, literally an avatar, an indistinguishable avatar that's now creating, usually it's 15 to 20-second reels talking about real estate, talking about what's going on in the market. So that means that probably within 90 days, every single agent that's active in real estate is going to have what appears to be, or what would have been 6 months ago, a very dominant position on social. So when social is filled with mostly videos that are all really well done, all optimized for YouTube SEO, all perfectly, clickbaited, designed to make it so that the algorithm loves it. When everyone's able to do the same thing, because AI is creating that type of content for everybody, what's going to make one stand out from the other? I got the answer, and you already know the answer. Not a damn thing. So anybody who's telling you that the way to build your business in 2026 on forward is by doing it on branding and social media, maybe that's all they got to share with you. Maybe they don't have the ability to teach you skills and whatnot. I don't know why they're telling you that, because they have to know that's not true. I can only theorize, but I will tell you what is true. You should do all that stuff, but you've got to understand that's there to supplement or reinforce your offline or your proactive lead generation. So for example, if you are very active in a particular community selling real estate, and you are on the socials and you're doing the content and you're doing all the things that we teach you to do in Premier Coaching, and at the same time, you're active at the PTA, you're active at the gym, people see you out and about, you're doing things intentionally with the goal of meeting people, but they're also following you on social, that's closing the loop. But if you're not doing the proactive, actually out and about having real meaningful conversations with folks, and you're only doing the social, you are going to be ghosted. You're out. You're done. You're what would Zoe say? You're roasted. What is she?
Roasted,
Yeah,
toasted, and something else.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but
Oh, she says you're crusty, musty, and something else.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Our 12-year-old.
Yeah,
So
but
you
that's
guys,
really true. As you were talking, I was thinking about, our elite coaching clients who, we know more intimately their transactions because we're talking to them one on one. I was just mentally going through what I know they have pending, and it's virtual. I mean, I can't even name something that came only from social. It's all like face to face. It's either center of influence, which we're going to talk about next. It's meeting with an expired. It's visiting a for sale by owner. It's working with probate attorneys and actually going to their offices. It's one-on-one work that is supported by things like talking to that seller when you're pricing their house and saying, you know what, before we met, I used my AI to see what's being built in that field behind your house, just so that I'm sure what's going on, using it as a tool instead of as a crutch. So I think that also plays into social media. You can't just be so dependent on that. What did you say yesterday? 70% of Instagram is AI anyway, and people
well,
are basically not buying it.
y'all remember not too long ago, 90 days ago, where supposedly there was going to be a rule that said that when you're watching an AI video, it has to say made by AI, or there had to be some kind of watermark on it. Well, did y'all notice how that conversation just went away? Why did it just go away? Because everything on, you can assume any video you're watching, 99% of them are AI generated. Literally, people are just putting in prompts, AI is creating the content, and off to the races. It's what Julie and I have been predicting. I hate to sound boastful, but it's true. It's what we've been warning you guys about for years. What happened? We saw it slowly happening. And the same things happened on a micro scale over the last 2 decades. For example, just before, social media, I know some of you don't know before social media, but imagine this. You've got an advantage in a marketplace because you're doing a lot of really high-end postcards, direct mail, right? You're doing newsletters, you're doing postcards. You are nailing this neighborhood twice a week. Great quality postcards. Everything's done. Top drawer, best of the best, right? You have an advantage in that marketplace. People are hearing from you all the time. Yeah, you're wasting a lot of money every month. Say you're mailing to a farm of 5,000 homes, and maybe every year 500 of them get sold, and you have maybe an opportunity at going and listing appointments for 50 or 75 of them. Even if you're just average, you're going to list 35 or 45 of them, right? I mean, this is how the statistic would work. But
Yep.
then what happened? Somebody else would start doing postcards as well. And maybe they would copy your designs. Maybe they would do a better job. And then another person did, and another person did, and another person did. Then all of a sudden, that same homeowner who was only getting your postcard, last year, now when they go to their mailbox, they're so annoyed with all the crap they're getting in the mail from
Yeah.
agents. It's oversaturated. It's annoying. That's what's happening on social. And so what do people do? Trash, 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 trash. They don't call any of them. They don't look at any of them. You guys get it? And that's what happens. And then it's like what do agents do that have been relying on building their businesses off just direct mail? They're screwed. And that's what's happening on social. That's what's happening with a lot of this digital stuff. It just makes sense. That's the nature of all these things. The one thing, the one place, the one area where you can always dominate is your ability to have meaningful conversations with folks. You don't have to have real estate breath when you talk with people, but you have to let them know that you're in the business, and you have to be having meaningful conversations. And again, you will reinforce with your social media. You'll reinforce with your videos and your reels. Maybe they see them, maybe they don't. But the moral of the story is that conversation is what's going to get you the business more than ever, which leads to point number or prediction number three. Prediction number three is predictable income will, and we said only come from your centers of influence and past clients, but I'll say it will be dominated by your
Primarily, yes.
primarily. It'll be dominated by your centers of influence and past clients. Julie, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, when compared to things like paid lead generation, some of the social that you talked about, but paid lead generation, especially Zillow and stuff like that, is going to continue to get more expensive. Do you think that they're going to email everybody and say, guess what? We're reducing what we're going to charge you? No, it's going to get more competitive, less reliable. I find it hard to believe that it could become even more competitive, less reliable, and more expensive, but it will. Chasing cold leads is an expense, both in terms of paying to get that supposed lead. I don't even think of it as a lead, but also using your time. Nurturing your relationships is an investment. So the way I look at the center of influence is people are going to meet you. Maybe you're at the gym, you're at PTA, you're doing whatever face to face. They're maybe then going to do a search or through AI or Google just to see what you look like online. Do you seem like you have a professional presence? Does it seem like you do real estate for real, full time? Or do you seem like this is just like your side hustle? They're going to kind of maybe spend 10 minutes on you, check you out, make sure you're for reals. But the initial contact is what matters. And I do see that with our coaching clients all the time because every time we go over their numbers, they're doing their whiteboards as we teach them in Premier Coaching and Elite Coaching. Where'd the lead come from? Source all of your leads. It's almost always something, I like a Christmas party, or it was at the gym, or something like that. And yeah, maybe they communicated over Instagram or they communicated over Messenger or whatever, but that didn't send them the lead.
Well,
That's the
what did
difference.
Julie just say, right? So she just said something that's really important where you guys get confused. So say, for example, you do know somebody from church and they've talked to you a number of times, or they know from other people that you're a great real estate agent, or at the very least that you're in real estate. They don't have your phone number. So what they're going to do is they're going to go to the internets and they're going to, look you up or read into about your background and whatnot. That's where
Yep.
social media actually plays in. Now, where it gets confusing is they're going to message you through Instagram or whatever.
Right.
You're going to get a message through Instagram that from this particular person, and you're going to think the lead came from Instagram. And what's even worse is a lot of you who are buying social media branding type marketing gimmicks, and you're getting communicated through the platforms. You're actually, and the companies that are selling you the gimmicks are actually saying that that was a lead generated from from their gimmicky thing on Instagram or Facebook. You guys get the
So it's
point?
easy to believe that that's how it came. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you want to have an unfair advantage in the marketplace, do what other people aren't willing to do. And that's going to be mostly having meaningful conversations. And you don't really have to have that many to make a huge impact. Yesterday, we talked about things you could be doing with, like, for example, how to lead generate. We talked about expireds and for sale by owners. And we obviously talked about centers of influence and past clients. We talked about probate. We talked about notice of default. We talked about all these viable, ready to go seller leads. And if you want to build your business to the next level and you don't want to be relying on centers of influence and past clients as your primary thing, because the inconsistency with centers of influence and past client marketing, even though it's critical, the inconsistency comes in the fact that you don't know who in your list is going to want to transact next. And you might have a list of 300 people or whatever. Hypothetically, 30 or 40 of those people are going to do a transaction in a particular year. If you should do two things. And the second one's the most important. You should be doing passive things to remind them and, give them something of value, letting them know you're in real estate. But if you're not making the phone call, you're not going to get the lead. And that's the other thing that we've seen. People with lists who are not making calls are not getting the business. They're not getting anywhere close to 10%. And look, when we were in real estate, we did not like making the calls either. We certainly didn't like making the calls.
Nobody does ever,
Nobody
really.
does. It's doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do at the highest level.
Yeah,
But
but here's your point though, Tim. The existence of your database alone is not enough.
right.
It's similar to what we were saying, Instagram didn't send you that lead. Well, your database isn't going to send you the lead. It's not going to do the work for you. And there are a lot of set it and forget it support things like digital newsletters and things of that nature and postcard campaigns and all that. But if you're not going to make the call, you're not going to do the pop by, the visits, all of those types of things, and a lot of the, social interaction, you're simply not going to get the same result as agents who do. And you all listening know some of you are that agent that gets all of your business that way. But if it's not you yet, agents. And then the next listing that pops up in your office is this big, beautiful listing that you wish you would have had. Ask yourself, why did that agent get that listing? How did they get that?
Nine times out
Probably,
of 10, yeah, nine
yeah,
times out of 10, it's not marketing and branding. But I'll tell you something that's kind of
no.
funny that you guys will figure out if you haven't figured it out already. When you go to online or offline events, and there's always a panel of superstar agents that are getting interviewed or whatever, and they ask about lead generation, they never, very, very rarely do they actually say that I get 70% of my business from centers of influence and past clients. They'll talk about their funnels, they'll talk about their creative marketing and their branding, and they'll talk about all these
Campaigns.
these
Mhm.
very complicated things, because those types of things are what people like to hear, because people don't want to be told that, after 5 years, the average agent gets 70% of their business from centers of influence and past clients. If you're not getting that kind of return on your list, it's because you're not calling them. You're doing too much passive things. But when you're
Right.
watching these panels and you're listening to these, very successful agents present their lead generation ideas, you ever notice they're always telling you the really complicated ones? You ever notice they're telling you the ones that are just designed to basically try to impress you? They're not telling you that they get most of their business from church. They're not telling you they're getting most of the business from their neighbors or from PTA or from whatever it is. They want you to, it's not that they are trying to lie to you or fool you. It's just that it's not very entertaining for someone to be in front of a group of people and say, well, here's what I do to get my most of my business. I work at I volunteer for my son's soccer league. I go to church every Sunday and I teach third graders Bible study. They don't want to say that, so I have this complicated funnel and
I know.
I track the clicks and I use all these expensive campaigns and I have this branding expert. That's what they all want to talk about. But the reality in real estate is the business consumers don't make their decisions based on what you're being told and frankly being sold to believe. They make their decisions based on when they're deciding who they're going to hire to sell their home. It's, do I know somebody already? And if I do, I'm probably going to call that person, centers of influence of past clients. And if they don't, then what most people do is they ask for a referral from a trusted friend or advisor, center of influence and past client referral. You guys get it? And then on average, if they don't find who they're going to use as their real estate agent from, who do they know, who they used before, a referral from a trusted friend or advisor, then something like 6 or 7% of the time, they're going to respond to an ad. They're going to respond to somebody's branding. Advertising and branding. I know those advertising and branding people want to tell you it's not the same thing. They want to give you some complicated analytical reason why it's not the same thing, but it's the same thing. I'll prove it to you. If all of a sudden you stop advertising your brand, you stop getting leads. So you weren't ever branding, you were just advertising. Again, why is it that the human brain wants things to be more complicated than they are? Why do all of us want to believe that we have to have these big, complicated, multi-geared systems? There's an old story, and I'll round the bend on today's show talking about this. Steve Jobs, if you guys will remember, he got fired from Apple, and then Apple started to go, essentially become a junk company, and they begged Steve to come back. And he said no, he said no, he said no. And then finally they hired him back. And he walks into this boardroom meeting and all these product advisors or all these product VPs were there and he said, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And this one was in charge of wires and connections. And this was in charge of monitors. This one was in charge of keyboards. This was in charge of cases, just all these different people. And he said, in essence, he said, well, you're all fired because we're only gonna make one product. And we're going to make the best product we possibly can. And we're going to focus all of our best energies on making this one product. And it was the Apple computer. And all of these other people that are trying to overly complicate this business and thus slowly ruin the business, they're all gone. And then what happened? He turned it all around. And then after they dominated on personal computers, you're probably on an Apple right now. Then they chose other devices to focus on. That's how business people who want to be in business for a long period of time think. Become the best at one thing. And your one thing, as far as lead generation, based on what we just told you guys, when you are building your business, and we discussed this yesterday, if Julie and I were to start a business again, our real estate sales business, there are two things we definitely do. Centers of influence and past client, proactive marketing to them, doing things, meeting with them, and doing the passive. And we definitely work expireds. And what are you thinking, Jules?
Well, what I can hear in the ether out there, agents that are like, well, I don't have a bunch of past clients and I don't, I'm not really that social. And, I hear what you guys are saying, but God,
Probate. Do
that
probate.
feels right. You can do probate, you can do other things, but, don't make it so hard in your head. You do have a database. It's in your phone. Even if you don't have it in our CRM, you have friends, you have people that you know. You can go to meetup.com and find 5 things right now that interest you, where you can expand your center of influence, where you can go and have like-minded people that are doing, maybe it's a photography school or something, but you all are going there for the same reason. Talk about real estate. Don't make it so hard. We teach this in Premier Coaching. I talk even to our elite coaching clients. They're not all just naturally super hyper social people, right? So you can do something about it. Don't tell yourself that you can't be focused on center of influence. You can, and you can do it. What I tell agents is be yourself first. Go to things that make you comfortable, that make you happy, because you're more likely to do it repetitively, but then learn to talk about real estate. Use the Ford script that we teach in coaching. It works. So don't talk yourself out of this just because you don't have 1,000 past clients.
So what'd you
There's
learn
only
on
one way you're going to get them.
What'd you learn
Go
on
ahead.
today's show? What'd you guys learn today? 2026 is going to be the start of your best year ever. It's going to probably be the start of a mega cycle in real estate that could last up to 20 years. We've discussed this many times on this show. While we do believe we're in a massive real estate boom, and this is the very beginning stages. And we've also told you that if you want to be successful in real estate, keep it simple. Right? Demystify it. Move away from anything that's overly complicated that you have to hire a army of VAs and engineers and AI to help you solve for. Because guess what? Most of the business long term is had from you being yourself, doing what you like to do around people that also share the same interests. And that should be a relief for all of you. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It shouldn't be that complicated. And the more complicated you let it be, the less likely it is to work and less likely you are to succeed. So listen, we didn't get to all of today's notes. Obviously, we never do. And so if you want the rest of today's notes, make sure you guys go subscribe to our newsletter, harrisrealestatedaily.com. The link is down below, or just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. In the meantime, have a fantastic day. So look for some special podcasts over the next 2 weeks. We anticipate some big days coming that are going to be almost like almost like these clouds have finally cleared over housing, and
Yes.
it's a totally new world. That is what's coming our way, no doubt. Be excited, be motivated, stay connected, have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.